Good evening, everyone. Today is Tuesday, October 12, 2010. We are having a special meeting of the Committee of the Whole. If you could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. And to make this meeting official, I'd ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll, please.
Gudenkauf. Here. Peasant. Absent. Shea. Here. Leader. Absent. Rose. Here. Graham.
Here.
Hipskin.
Here.
York.
Here.
Nybo.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Morley.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
12 present, 2 absent.
12 present, 2 absent. We have an official quorum. And we do not have on the agenda public forum tonight, but if there is anyone that would like to speak for public forum, I would allow that. So if you'd like to please raise your hand, I'd be willing to give you a couple minutes for public forum. Otherwise, we do have a Committee of the Whole meeting set up for stormwater. Anybody that would like to speak for public forum? Okay. Good. I will close the public forum portion of the meeting and go on to the introduction of the Stormwater Task Force. As many of all of us know, Elmhurst was rocked by 2 record storms, that one hit in June, another hit in July. The storms were events that surpassed the 100-year event that FEMA certifies our city for, thus causing much water damage in many, many homes. I just got an email from FEMA today indicating that they are extending a 30-day extension onto applications and appeals. And also in that email, they mentioned that this was the largest FEMA event to Area 5 of the country ever. Nearly $250 million has been dedicated to helping people rebuild their homes and getting them back on track. Businesses that took losses, et cetera, as well. So this was a significant event. We're here to hopefully see how we can deal with these types of situations better in the future. We had many applications come in willing to serve. We've got a great community, I think, that always steps up when times are tough. We had, I believe, somewhere around 90 applications. I originally said the task force was going to be around 30. The applications and the quality of people that applied was of such a magnitude that I pushed it to 40. A lot of very, I think, in my opinion, very smart, dedicated people, a lot of people with engineering backgrounds, finance backgrounds, people from all parts of town, north side, south side. Every ward has pretty much got representation, and we've got men and women volunteering their time to make this happen. So I appreciate all 40 of you, and some couldn't be here, but if you'd all please stand at this time, and please, I'd like to give you a round of applause for your willingness to serve our community. So anybody that was chosen for the task force, if you could please rise at this stand and be recognized. This is our first workshop, and I think, you know, we're all in the same boat. Many of us here up here are new. Although many of us have lived there for many years. Many of us have seen the storms from '87 that took almost 4,000 to 5,000 homes in horrific flooding. This was not quite that magnitude, and many of the infrastructure issues that we addressed, the DuPage County stormwater infrastructure that was put in place with the quarry and Louis Reservoir, along with a certification of a berm that we actually put in place since this council has been newly established, saved the community from creek flooding. But we still had overland flooding from streets. And that's what we're here to look at. We're here to look at sanitary issues. We're here to look at ComEd issues, variety of different things. And this is the first of 4 workshops, educational workshops, to not only educate you, but educate people like myself and the aldermen. We're not experts in this area. I'm sure we will be, or close to it, by the time we're finished with this process. We'll know a lot more about stormwater than we've ever thought we'd learn about stormwater. And we've got probably, I think, one of the best engineering firms here to help us along with that. We've got good staff members to help us along with that. We've got a great city manager that's been through the 87 occurrence and has been through all of the occurrences throughout the years. So, and we've got people willing to serve. And I think we will come up with solutions to this problem, and hopefully be able to come up with some funding as well to help fix the problem as well. So, with that, all of your names will be listed on our website here with probably sometime this week, just so you know that. Hopefully nobody has any problems with that, but we are appreciative of your service. In my opinion, we needed to get the residents involved in the process. We needed a third-party engineering firm separate from our staff to confirm some of the things that we've got going on in town. And as a team, we'll be working together throughout this to hopefully come up with some resolutions to the issues that we see throughout our community. So with that, I will open up the workshop. It's an overview on wastewater treatment operations, and we've got people from Christopher Burke and our own staff here, our director, Mike Hughes, our Public Works Director, and also our city manager. Guys?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the introduction, and my thanks to the Mayor's Task Force members and greetings to you. We do look forward truly to working with you to, again, deal with a City of Elmhurst issue with commitment and resolve and integrity and mutual shared objectives of solving problems and making the fine quality Elmhurst community yet a better place. So truly we look forward to that. It's my understanding that I will, from the manager perspective, try to schedule our next committee meeting evening of agendas such that after the second workshop, which will be a committee of the whole meeting, we will meet with the Mayor's Task Force after that meeting. So for the task force members, the City Council has asked that these workshops be on our committee evenings in October and November. Typically, that's the second and fourth Monday of the month. Today is Tuesday because yesterday was a federal holiday, so the Monday meeting pushed till tonight. So 2 weeks from last night will be our next workshop. That topic with the Burke firm's assistance of preparing the education workshop and the PowerPoint will focus on Salt Creek issues. Then the second Monday in November will focus on sanitary sewer issues and sanitary pumping stations. The last, fourth Monday then in November will focus on stormwater systems and stormwater sewers and stormwater lift stations. That will provide the foundation for the workbook that everybody should have. If we've missed somebody, please let me know. We'll correct that. And those who couldn't come this evening, we understand it was a bit of a late notice for folks. We'll make sure those folks get the notebook. And with that as a very preliminary introduction, again, after the next workshop, which should be the fourth Monday in October, after the workshop, which is embedded within the committee of the whole meeting, we will ask the task force members to stay in the room, and we'll meet, the mayor will then meet with the task force and review for you expectations that the mayor would have and how city staff can assist you in that regard, and how we anticipate in the future working then with the selected consultant that will be assisting the community in going through a comprehensive plan of stormwater issues. Maybe in that regard, one last item. In your workbook, you have under the, the miscellaneous tab is the document that was sent by the city requesting qualifications for a consulting engineering firm to the city. These are due in late October. They'll be reviewed by the review committee of the city. That's the mayor, the chairman of the Public Works Committee, Alderman Kennedy, and then from the city staff, Assistant Manager Kopp, Director of Public Works Hughes, and City Engineer Corey Taberry. Those 5 members will be reviewing the responding firms relative to their qualifications. Probably will be collaborating with the task force in some degree, so you are brought up to speed and aware of what is being reviewed, who those firms are, what their qualifications are. Those 5 folks, though, will need to, from their perspective, their review, their wisdom, their analysis, identify the best firm relative to qualifications to serve the assignment. The City Council then will be negotiating a contract with that firm to provide that work. So with that as a backdrop, I think this is a journey that we're beginning together. We've been on a journey as a community on stormwater issues. The selection of this consulting firm probably will not be concluded until December, and that firm's going to need to get their feet under them and do a lot of work and evaluation before they're able to do a lot of reporting out. So for the, again, managing expectations for the task force, I think your efforts will be in getting prepared to work with this consultant over the next couple of months. That consultant will be working with the community and with you, I think, in the late winter and spring, and probably on some assignments even beyond that. Before we get into the PowerPoint, just report for the City Council and the task force. The Burke firm was selected for some interim assignments which they're working on, and one of which, again, was the preparation of the existing situation, PowerPoints of the wastewater treatment plant, the creek, stormwater, and sanitary systems, but also to take a look at some of the areas of the community that were significantly adversely affected, and that focused on the surface ponding areas, which Burke is studying, and then on the sanitary station at Saylor and Jackson, and the stormwater station at Jackson and the Creek. The Burke group has been working on those assignments, specifically Saylor, Jackson, and the Jackson Creek lift stations. They've got a interim report, which they anticipate will be in final form by the end of this week. So with that report in final form, we'll certainly get it to the Mayor and City Council and to the task force. And then through our operations perspective, probably the Public Works Committee began working on what those recommendations are suggesting relative to recommendations for consideration. So with that said, I would like to introduce the city team that is involved on this and will be presenting on the PowerPoint. Will be our Public Works Director, Mr. Mike Hughes. Our city engineer is Corey Taberry. If maybe, Corey, you could just stand for a moment. I'd like to introduce for the City Council for the first time and for the task force, Mr. Gary Smith. Gary has just been brought on to serve the city of Elmhurst. He's the manager of water and wastewater operations. Elmhurst found him in a nationwide search, and I can't say that we dragged him. He came willingly from Oklahoma to serve the Elmhurst community. He's got a long history of water and wastewater systems managements on public sector service, and also working for private consultants doing work in water production and wastewater treatment operations. And I think he complements our city team well and will bring a fresh new perspective that will allow for the team thing to work for Elmhurst's benefit. Together each will achieve more. So we welcome Gary. And then from the Burke group tonight is John Caruso. John, could you stand? He's done a lot of work on the lift stations, the SCADA systems, and is a critical team member of the Burke group. And Luke Sherry, also with Burke. And I skipped over Dan Rosenwinkel, who is the superintendent of our water productions and wastewater operations. So these are folks that are helping us get through this, and wanted you to be introduced, working with the task force and the city council. And Mr. Hughes will go through the PowerPoint on wastewater operations, and I'm going to go over and stand by his side and help if there's questions and assist as best I can from over there.
You're standing.
Everybody else can sit. Mr. Hughes?
Breaking my stuff.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Tom. We're going to try to cover a little bit of ground here tonight. Please bear with me. Wastewater treatment plants are not the most exciting facilities out there, but it is an extremely critical element in the city's infrastructure. It's the end of the line for all the sanitary flow generated in the city. So we'll try to move through here. It's not a real long PowerPoint, so hopefully I won't lose too many of you. Each of these elements that we're going to discuss is really got a lot of technology within it, but tonight we're going to take about a 20,000-foot view. This PowerPoint was prepared by Burke, and I think it's pretty comprehensive. What you've got in this photo is the actual treatment plant looking southeast from above Route 83. It's located about halfway between the Prairie Path and the light where Walmart is. It's located on an 18-acre site. Again, it's squeezed between Route 83 and Salt Creek, so you can see that there's a bit of a land pinch there. It treats the wastewater from the entire city. Only the city of Elmhurst goes it. Thanks, Mike. Which is a population of about 45,000 people. The current value of the treatment plant is $32 million, and it's got a $6.2 million operating budget. It's staffed with 16 full-time employees. It's run 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It's received numerous awards over the year, including the Central Water Environment Association States Award in 2003. Safety, collecting data, reporting injury data is an important part of our operation out there. It's a large place, and the guys are walking around all winter long out there, so it's one where we're very careful. It's one of the largest wastewater treatment plants in DuPage County. The average daily flow in 2009 was 9.8 million gallons. You'll see that million gallons per day. You'll see that all throughout the PowerPoint. That's the normal rate of flow that is used to define treatment plants. That 9.8 million gallons is roughly 10 to 15% of the average base flow of Salt Creek, which means in an average day, how much water is going down Salt Creek, it's about 10 times that. It's got two independent power supplies, two ComEd feeds. One is the main power supply, and the other one serves as a backup if that first one goes down. And then there's also a 175 kilowatt generator that supplies enough emergency power to power the facility in the case of power disruption. So,
I'd like to add here, not on the PowerPoint, but you see the 9.8 million gallons per day. At the average annual over the year, that's the average daily flow, 9.8 million gallons. Elmhurst is a little over 40,000 people. At 100 gallons of water consumption per day, Elmhurst uses less than 5 million gallons of fresh water per day. That fresh water, in most cases, finds its way and ends up going down the sewer system into the creek. 5 million is just over half of the average day. The other water is water that doesn't come from the water system. It comes from the sewers through infiltration and inflow. And we'll be hearing more about that as we get through the PowerPoint today, and then significantly into the sanitary sewer system PowerPoint. All operators of municipal waste systems are chasing, if you will, stormwater that is inflowing the sanitary system or infiltrating the sanitary system when it rains, and trying to remove that INI, referred to as INI, remove that INI from the collection system. Elmhurst, actually, the Public Works Committee later this evening has got on its agenda the issue of reviewing a low bid meeting qualifications proposal to spend almost $1 million on a sewer lining program directed at reducing infiltration, inflow, and reinforcing the sanitary sewer system. So this is an ongoing, every year part of managing a municipal system. You'll be hearing more about that.
thanks. The plant originally was constructed in 1936, and the original 1936 building is still in use out there, but obviously there's been numerous improvements over the years. In the early 1990s, the improvements included raising the electrical room and flood proofing to provide greater flood protection. The entire wastewater treatment plant was flooded in the 1987 flood, so all controls were lost, and it was just down for the count. They'd increased the plant capacity by 50% from 40 million gallons to 60 million gallons, which allowed a decrease in the overflow bypass locations within the collection system, from 42 to 10. And those improvements cost $15.3 million at the time.
Again, just as a keep the thought on the wastewater treatment plant, it's wastewater. In the workbooks the task force has received and the city council has received as history, a article out of a late 1950s Elmhurst press article that covered municipal news at the time, and that news article talks about a significant decision by the Elmhurst City Council that they were about to make relative to making a decision to invest mightily over $9 million in converting the Elmhurst sewer system that was a combined system from a combined system to a separate system. That was ultimately then approved by the Elmhurst City Council, almost $10 million. You CPI'd that forward from the late 50s, that'd be over $70 million today, was invested back then to convert the collection system from combined to sanitary, which was a very good decision back then. The Burke Group has affirmed that. You'll be hearing a lot more about that as we go forward. That's part of, again, the existing situation that now we're managing.
A little more general information. The effluent, which is the product that leaves the plant and goes to the creek, is regulated by the Illinois EPA, the quality of it, and the city has a permit which is called the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Permit, NPDES. The city's current permit was issued on December 31st, 2004, and is still current today. And here you can see the different parameters which the city is responsible for testing for and the limits within which they're supposed to be, meeting. This is a schematic of the plant operation system. You kind of get a feel for how complicated and interconnected it is, with everything flowing from one area of the plant to another area, improving the quality of the water as it goes through. The if you can see on the screen to the left, basically the very dirty water comes in there, it makes its way through and goes out here, and over here is where the clean water is discharged to the creek. So we'll the next sets of slides kind of walk you through the treatment process in a very general way, starting with primary treatment, secondary, and then at the very end, the effluent is chlorinated and then dechlorinated before being released to the creek. The wastewater enters the plant in this area. These three large pumps, you can actually see them off Route 83. They lift the water, or the influent up, so that it can flow by gravity through the plant. That's concrete structure there limits the amount of water, influent that can get into 20 million gallons per day. Flows in excess of 20 MGD are bypassed off to an excess flow pumping station. There's 3 pumps there. Each has 10 MGD capacity in case one would be down or out of service. So we can always make sure we can run the 20 million gallons. Then it goes through bar screens and a grinding process to take out as many of the really large solids as possible. Then the liquid then takes about 21 hours before it's processed all the way through the plant and discharged to Salt Creek. The next stop is the grit settling tanks, aerated grit settling tanks. At this point, the velocity of the sewage is reduced, so heavy particles start to settle to the bottom, and we start the process of separating out the solids from the liquid. The grit, which is mostly inorganic solids, is then separated and eventually removed and taken to a landfill. After the liquid leaves the aerated grit tank, it comes to the primary clarifiers, where a large rotating boom skims off the floating materials, such as the fats and oils, and settles, and solids are allowed to settle to the bottom. Both of those are then pumped to a digester for further reduction in the solids. After that, they are pumped over to the aeration tanks. I think there's 10 aeration tanks at the plant, and in these, there's air and microorganisms mixed with the wastewater, and it's maintained in a suspension the whole time, and that is the process is known as activated sludge. This activated sludge converts the solids to a material that will settle out in the next clarifier, the second clarifier. So it goes to the second clarifier after that tank, and again, you have a rotating boom on top, and you have settling going on. The floating solids are skimmed, and the solids that settle out are pumped to the digester. After those three steps, it then comes to the chlorination tanks. Flow from the clarifiers is conveyed up these screw pumps to a tank where it's hit with chlorine. Chlorination provides disinfectant of any harmful organisms that might be still alive, and then also it allows some slight settling of solids if there's any left. Basically, one of those screws is used on a daily basis, and the other screws can be used if we're in an overflow situation. But that way, that can always take the 20 million gallons per day through the chlorinator and have the effluent be chlorinated. After we chlorinate it, we dechlorinate it, because chlorine is considered a toxic material in the water stream, so we have to then remove it to make it safe for plants and animals, and that we use sulfur dioxide to neutralize the chlorine. Here's the outfall from the wastewater treatment plant, where it's downstream of the dechlorination, and this is the discharge pipe at Salt Creek. Again, discharges about 10 to 15% of the base flow in Salt Creek. So now we've got the liquids out of the plant, and what's left behind is the solids, known as, today they call them biosolids. They used to be more known as sludge, but it's dried and dewatered by presses, depending on summer or winter, and then it's trucked off, and that is land applied. The city handled 573 dry tons of sludge during 2009, and obviously the water, by removing the water as much as we can, we're reducing our trucking costs, because the dry sludge is a lot lighter than wet sludge. Here again are the tests that the city is required to conduct on a daily basis, testing the effluent to make sure it's within the parameters that the EPA has set, and we do this every day, all year long, every 365 days a year. The plant operations, another sort of overview, the capacity of the plant is 20 million gallons per day for full treatment. When the inflows exceed that 20 million gallons per day, the plant is capable of treating another 59 million gallons per day in excess flow, which consists of the preliminary treatment, primary treatment, and then also the chlorination and dechlorination. This is going on, as Tom said, when we're in a condition where there's a lot of inflow and infiltration. We have a lot of clean water coming to the treatment plant during a rain event. So with the 20 that's going through the plant and the 59 that's being bypassed through the plant, we have a total capacity of treated effluent of 79 million gallons per day. When the flows get even higher than the 79, then anything above that has to be pumped directly to the creek, and it goes in untreated. So there again, you can see why it's such an important thing to try to keep the inflow and the clean water out, because that's what a lot of that is. So most of it is. You could say, well, if why don't we build a bigger plant? If we can get as much as 80 to 100 million gallons a day, why not build a bigger plant? Well, there are things that restrict that ability. First of all, just getting a permit from the IEPA to expand the plant capacity without being able to demonstrate a demand increase. In other words, the city of Elmhurst is very built out. We're not going to add another 4,000 homes, so we really aren't going to get there with proving that we have a demand. And then, of course, if you did build a plant that could, say, treat 100 million gallons per day, on an average day, only 10% of that plant would be being utilized, which of course would be highly inefficient. And then of course the cost to build a 100 million gallon per day plant would be extremely large. Again, this is what Tom was alluding to earlier on the I&I. This is the, as you see here, at the plant and at the lift stations, the flow goes up when the rain starts because we're getting inflow and infiltration. So the graph on the left illustrates, it's pretty complicated and hard to see, but that illustrates the inflow to the plant, and the different colored lines are whether it's treated flow, excess flow, or bypass flow, and it's hard to tell, but it corresponds to the increase in the rain. The chart on the right is USGS rain gauge, so that's measuring rainfall. That's about 7 inches in about 7 hours, so that was the July 23rd, 24th event. And at the same time that happens, you start seeing the plant go into excess flow. As Tom said, you know, I&I is addressed on an annual and ongoing basis through what's called sewer lining. Here you see there's the main sources are sump pumps, gravity drains, downspouts. These are actually prohibited, but they exist. Sanitary sewer lift stations are not designed for the peak flows. The sanitary sewer lift stations are designed to carry the sanitary flow. There's some extra capacity, but not enough to carry all the clean water as well. And the inflows along with infiltration conveyed to the plant is pumped at least twice and then treated. So in other words, you're treating clean water. So again, another reason to try to reduce I&I.
Maybe before we go forward, we'll cover it in more detail with the sanitary lift station and sanitary sewer system PowerPoint. As the slide shows, most of I&I is now prohibited by current IEPA and city ordinances. The city of Elmhurst updated its ordinances as the city made policy decisions to convert from a combined system to a separate system, and then continued to meet the Clean Water Act federal standard rules and regulations, converting local ordinances, stating and making policies to bring Elmhurst into those standards. So most of the city of Elmhurst is actually what's called legal nonconforming, meaning that when the footing drains were built around the house, when the sump pumps were there, actually there weren't sump pumps, it was just combined sewer, storm and sanitary together. Anything built before 1970 was built in a legal fashion with a combined system. So only the homes that have been built since 1970 have a separate storm and sanitary system. And the city of Elmhurst has been working hard with a number of programs to remove that I&I, remove that stormwater infiltration, stormwater inflow from what was a combined sewer that's now a sanitary sewer. But there's a lot left, and most of it is frankly on private property. So we'll talk about that in more detail. Made great progress, but obviously when it rains a lot of I&I gets in that sanitary system and causes problems.
Yeah, as you can see, when the inflows exceed 79 MGD, that is, again, that untreated wastewater going into the Salt Creek. And as Tom just alluded to, you know, that a lot of that water is coming from footing drains and sump pumps, and it's pretty well believed by people who do this for a living, I guess, that at some point the EPA and then the IEPA is going to mandate that any city reduce its I&I again, and those footing drains are going to have to be looked at that time. And this is just sort of historical stuff. The wet weather flows, you know, the Chicago deals with it at the Chicago River Lock and Lake Michigan being opened, filling the deep tunnel. It's been around forever. As Tom alluded to earlier, the problems have existed in Elmhurst since the 1950s when the community decided that was the time that it needed to separate the sanitary and the storm sewer system. So, but a lot of those cross connections were already in place where people were tied into the only sewer at the time, which was the combined. So those connections are still there at this time. And again, going back to what Tom and I were just saying, when the capacity of the treatment plant is exceeded too often, community may be put on restricted status by the IEPA, which has a lot of negative impacts, severe mandates to remove I&I, penalties and fines, and it can even tell you got to stop developing until you get it under control. In 1987, the city faced this problem, and that's what led to the 1990s improvements, the $15.3 million in treatment plant upgrades. Again, Tom said, you know, we're going to go into the other workshops. The treatment plant is the end of the line of the sanitary system, but it's got a lot of impacts back up the system. There's crossovers between the storm and sanitary. You know, it goes all the way into having an impact on backyard drains. At the time when it was decided some pumps had to come out of the sanitary, then that led to backyards being too wet, and then that led to an increased rear drain program. So it's all sort of interconnected, and one impacts the other. For the last 20 years, the city has been doing what we mentioned earlier, the lining of pipes called cured in place pipe. It's basically a large sock that's inverted into a sanitary sewer. It's expanded with hot water and allowed to cure. So that liner fits the inside of the sanitary sewer, which has probably got cracks and open joints. It makes a solid piece of pipe that runs from one manhole to the other, and it's a great way to reduce clear water from getting into the system. And the city has spent over $12 million lining in the last 20 years. But again, I&I is going to continue to be an issue for the city. When we have to re-permit the plant, it's going to probably be pointed out by the IEPA, and we're going to have to do something with it at that time. 20 years ago, every home and business was inspected for illegal connections. We'll see what comes out of the next go-round in ways to reduce I&I. I think that's it.
So I know that we wanted to certainly entertain questions from the city council, and if the city council has time, and time would permit, from the audience, but I think certainly from the mayor and city council, any questions on this. And again, this is a very strategic overview of the wastewater treatment plant operation. Public Works Committee has spent time at the actual wastewater treatment plant. We can do a tour of the treatment plant, should it be appropriate and necessary in the future. We'll work that out as time goes on. But any questions, Mr. Mayor?
Anybody have questions? Alderman Mulliner?
Yeah, just a couple of things going back, real simple things. You mentioned that the station is operating 24 hours a day. Is it actually manned 24 hours a day? Is there somebody actually on site 24 hours a day?
No, it's not manned. It's manned from 6:30 in the morning till 7 at night.
Okay, so during the off hours, is it all done through the SCADA system?
Yes, that's correct. There's a SCADA system, which is a computer monitoring system, which is tied to a computer, which is required to be brought home by one of the treatment plant operators, and will alarm him if there's something going on at the plant. Obviously, if we see wet weather coming, we stay in 24 hours. We don't go home.
Okay. The other question I had was related. It goes to this, the issue of the legal non-conforming, where we had the sewers that were combined. Large percentage of the homes would have been built before 1970. What percentage of those homes do you believe at this point have actually conformed with what would be appropriate for today, where they actually have a full separation? Do we have any idea what percentage of those would be?
We have a good general idea, and we can specifically tabulate that. We know that's something that the Burke firm will be studying and evaluating as part of their interim assignment. The city has a GIS system. Every building is logged on that GIS as to the date of that permit. We know when the sanitary sewers went in the late 1960s. So anything before 1960 is connected to the combined system at the time, which was converted to a sanitary. So any house that was, again, built mid-1965 or earlier that hasn't gone through a expansion that required a permit to come to new standards is going to have the footing drains, and if there's a lower level garage, the outside drain, that all would be connected to the sanitary. So we know that's serious inflow and infiltration, but on private property.
Last question is related to the lining of the sewers, and I continually ask this just because I want to make sure that I really fully understand it. We've been lining the main sewer lines going down the streets. What impact and I know we'll be studying this more, but what impact do you think the laterals have as far as the water flowing into those? Do you think that there would be any benefit to coming back and doing a lining on those laterals or having those laterals replaced, or is that a significant amount of water that's flowing in from the laterals?
Yeah, I've heard that studies have shown about 40% of the inflow is coming from, or infiltration is coming from the laterals. If you run the calculations, we have almost as many miles of lateral as we do a sanitary sewer. It's a smaller pipe, but,
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mike, how often have we been in a bypass situation with the wastewater treatment plant, and have we ever been fined for bypassing the plant?
how many times in the last 2 years? Maybe 30 events, but that's not bypass clean, that's bypass still chlorinating and dechlorinating, so.
Have we ever been in a bypass clean situation where we're sending raw sewage directly into the creek?
In July, that happened.
And when was the time before that? How frequently is it?
Probably 20 years.
So has the IEPA's never fined us for doing this?
There's reporting requirements, but I don't think we've ever been fined. But if you're reporting it too frequently, that's when you can go on restricted status.
That's a very good question. In the sanitary system, and Baxter and Woodman did the original sewer separation design. Burke is now looking at those drawings and will be preparing the PowerPoint for the council and task force. We know there's, is it nine locations where the city of Elmhurst has a permitted overflow point within the sanitary system to allow for overflows in the system that have been shown to be necessary to allow, in certain conditions at least, basements not to flood. And that's what the IPA is looking at clamping down on. Part of the last plant expansion permit required that about 40 of those overflows be reduced down to 9, I think. That was actually in the wastewater treatment plant PowerPoint.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 questions, one to follow up on both Alderman Gutenkopf and Alderman Mulliner's questions. Specific to the July 23rd, 24th event, so the fact that we discharged raw sewage into Salt Creek tells me that we obviously hit 79 million gallons.
Correct.
How many millions of gallons did we put directly into the creek?
Well, we can pump 12 in addition to the 79, and that was exceeded. So we've been using the number of 100. But
So we hit 100 million gallons
That's a rate.
inflow.
Right.
And how much of that went to the creek?
Probably, well, 100 minus 79, right?
Into the creek. And that was raw sewerage. Okay.
Well, I mean, it's the diluted sewers, but it's untreated,
Right.
yes. Yeah.
But it's untreated by the plant. Yes, there's clear water that mix it up, but it's all intent and purposes, it's raw sewage. Thank you. The second question is regarding sewer pipe lining. Understand, if I heard you correctly, there's as much lateral pipe as running down the middle of the street pipe. That $12 million that we spent, what percentage of running down the middle of the street pipe have we lined?
I'd have to get that for you.
Rough guess.
Probably 25%.
Yeah.
Probably 25%.
So 25% of the approximate 50% of the total system. If laterals are 50%.
Include the laterals, right.
Thank you.
Director Hughes, real quick, similar to roads where we pave about 5 miles a year, is that similar to the sewer lining? We do so many linear feet a year,
About
basically?
3.5 miles approximately. It varies with the diameter of the pipe, how far you can get with.
Okay.
We budget $950,000 a year.
Okay. Just want to kind of put it in perspective in layman's terms. Alderman Shea, and I'll go to Alderman Brown.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Hughes, I know we're planning on adding another anaerobic digester. Will that help with us to handle more of the inflow, to handle over the 79 MGD?
It won't increase the capacity at all. It just will allow for better treatment or, yeah. What? What was that, Dan? Biological processing, but it will not increase the capacity.
Alderman Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question also tails on Alderman Gutenkopf's question. It's on slide 20 in regards to how much we can handle at the wastewater treatment plant. I know it's at 79. My question, though, is how often have we went over the 20 MGD? And Alderman Gutenkopf, I already asked how often have we gone over the over 79 MGD? But then my secondary question would be, on slide 9, there's 3 pumps, and each of those 3 handle 10 MGD. The third is a backup or a redundant pump from what I'm reading here. Is there any reason, instead of going to the excess flow pump station, that we wouldn't use that redundant pump as a slow ramp up compared to going to that auxiliary pump station?
Well, all the flow rates in the plant are at 20 MGD max, so if you could turn it on, but you'll flood
It wouldn't
everything.
be utilized.
No, you'd flood everything.
Okay, and then how often do we reach over 20 MGD?
Well, that was the 30 times in 2 years,
Oh, 30
but
times.
less than 79. In July, we went over 79, which was the first time in 20 years.
Thank you.
Chairman Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment for Alderman Mulliner. You had asked basically about how many houses that are constructed before 1970. There's a little more than 13,000 homes in Elmhurst, and a little more than 10,000 of those were built before 1970. So about 76% of the homes would conceivably have the old design in terms of the footing drains going right into the sanitary system. Okay.
Pretty significant number, and I think kind of puts things in perspective. Years ago, there was no stormwater ordinances in place. The planning wasn't there. Unfortunately, maybe the technology wasn't there, and you know, the newer homes, newer development, hospitals, new homes that are going up, all have a minimum stormwater ordinance by the county, which is one of the strictest in the country. So at a minimum, there's a 50% increase in stormwater capacity, anything that's newly built, you know, which I think puts things in perspective to some of the folks that maybe want to, you know, blame an event like July, which was a record event, on possibly my home or Alderman Nibel's home, or, you know, somebody that built a new home. But in actuality, the newer homes are doing it right. They're separating the sanitary and the stormwater, and so that's a good thing. And but you know, naturally, think perspectives. People just think bigger home, more problems. But just to clarify, Alderman Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious, Mr. Hughes, I think you said our current average, daily averages over a year is 9.8 MGD?
Correct.
Okay. Is there data or is there a tangible record or something that shows us that the sewer lining that we've done has reduced that average over the last 20 years?
Well, it's hard to say because it depends how wet the year is. I mean, we've had 4 really wet years, so while if you took a wet year and a dry year, you would see a reduction, but you know, depending on how much rain we had in a given year impacts that average daily flow. So it's actually up over the last 4 years because we've had so much rain, well above average. In 2005, we were designated as an extreme drought, and we were, I think, running right at our 4 million gallons per day as an average because we were just so dry. So it does reduce it, but it's hard to quantify on a yearly basis.
Thank you.
I'd also like to recognize Dr. Burke, who actually wasn't supposed to be here, but has staff here, and the staff is pro bono, because that was something that we talked about with the proposal. So they are doing, their presence here tonight is on the Burke firm, trying to earn our business. We appreciate that, and Dr. Burke actually is here, and want to recognize Dr. Burke in the back of the room for all his efforts. He is the authority of stormwater, in my opinion, in the state, and one of the highest in the country. being one of two mayors that's on the Stormwater Commission for the county, is how I met Dr. Burke, and his credentials, I think, speak for themselves. So we appreciate his hard work and his wisdom. So, any other questions? Alderman Nybo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had to strain my eyes to read the slide on page 27, the Chicago Tribune article, and I was unaware of this situation in 1991. I'm just wondering if someone can give us the shorthand version of what the issue was with the IEPA mandate to reduce our inflow of, I believe it was sewer into our sanitary system, and then the resulting strain.
The city of Elmhurst was at that time on a restricted status list, and there was constructive tension between staff and budget and recommendations and policy settings relative to spending the money to fix certain aspects of the utility system, sanitary collection system, and wastewater treatment plant, and not actually until the Illinois EPA issued a restricted status and went beyond that, actually indicated that there would be violations of the law applied to the elected officials. Did the policy makers make policy decisions to commit the community to millions of dollars of investment in the system? Reducing the amount of I&I in an aggressive fashion. In many cases, that did touch private property owners with sump pumps that had to be disconnected from the collection system. That resulted in the stormwater going into backyards and front yards. In some cases, the front yards then into the street in the wintertime, and we had icing conditions in the street and wet weather. And even after a rainfall event, because of the slower infiltration of stormwater to those drainage systems, we would end up as a community with stormwater issues. And I think what we know and understand, community input, community requests, in fact, drives a lot of policy decisions. As a result of that, policy decisions were made to invest in the system. That did some cleaning up of the stormwater flowing into the sanitary, but it allowed stormwater to then go into other areas. And there was a policy decision that is referred to, that I think Alderman Nybo was commenting on, where the city of Elmhurst then began to finance storm drains going onto private property to allow those drainage issues in backyards and drainage issues resulting in flooding in front yards to go away because of a carrot approach. The city would financially be a part of a solution. So that's been an ongoing program, and it's been suggested that perhaps that carrot approach perhaps should be applied beyond the programs of overhead sewers currently and rear yard drains currently to other aspects of private property flood enhancement measures. Actually, the Public Works Committee tonight is talking about potentially that aspect relative to check valves and gate valves.
Alderman Nybo.
Thank you. If we went through this in 1991 and we were in a process of identifying, these were illegal connects?
Well, they were legal at the time they were constructed, but became illegal as the city of Elmhurst system went from a combined system to a sanitary with a stormwater sewer system.
But how could there be still illegal connections? I'll just use that term. I mean, if we did this 20 years ago, how could there still be so many out there?
The city retroactively said that a downspout connection, even if it was part of what was at the time a legal connection, that all downspouts connected to the city sanitary system has to be disconnected. So that has been applied, and I don't believe there's many have gone back and done an illegal reconnection of a downspout into the sanitary sewer system. But the gravity footing drains around all of those homes that Alderman Kennedy summarized as a significant percentage built prior to 1965, those gravity drains drain 4, 5, 6, 7 feet below ground into the old combined sewer that's now a sanitary sewer. Very difficult procedure to dig that up, separate it, connect it to some type of a catch basin, and pump that storm water either to the storm sewer or to the yard. And it's all on private property. The past city councils have been, as city councils everywhere have been. I'm not aware of any, and that'll be part of our sanitary sewers. We'll do some research on that. I'm not aware of any community that has retroactively said that gravity drains to the sanitary have to be dug up and fixed. Very expensive. Actually, the city of Elmhurst first did that for all of the driveway drains and said those all have to be disconnected, but because of the expense and the folks that were affected appealing for relief, that decision was retracted, and those driveway drains, many in southwest Elmhurst have driveway drains that are connected to the sanitary sewer. Those are what I'm talking about. They were identified to be going forward illegal, and a law passed to say those have to be fixed, private property expense. The expense of that and the concerns expressed by the folks affected by that caused the decision makers at the time to say, maybe a good idea, maybe not a good idea, but at least for now, we're not going to do that.
Would that be the same problem that we would have if we tried to go down that? I mean, could that be the same problem that we'd have if we went down that route right now? Is we'd recreate what happened in '91?
City Council would have within its policy setting authority the right to make such a decision, but it would then have an impact that the community would need to deal with. However the policy would be determined.
No, I'm not talking about a policy. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm not talking about a policy decision. I'm talking about the pumps. It looks like a big problem here was that once they disconnected, the sump pumps and their drains were putting the water right out into the yards or out into the streets. Would we have that same problem right now?
All of that would then reappear.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Okay. Anybody from the task force have any questions for staff or our Public Works Director? If you'd like, you can come up to the microphone to my right or to my left. Go ahead. And
My name's Andy Packer. I don't know if it really matters, but when you're inserting that pipeline or anything, how much does it affect the capacity of the flow rate of the water that's happening right now? So does it slow down the amount of water? Back it up point, or is it going to take on more water and keep the water flowing, or is it just going to handle the same amount of water?
Lose about a ½ inch of diameter, maybe a little bit less. It's about a 1/4 inch thick liner. You probably gain some smoothness of pipe because it's very smooth plastic pipe, and it kind of covers over the little bumps between the bell and spigots. So you probably increase the flow rate with the smoothness, but lose a little bit in the diameter. So it's probably a net wash on capacity.
Can you specify it's sanitary?
Sorry, that's in the sanitary.
anyone else? We could probably pass that portable mic around if it's easier. Sure. There you go.
Thank you. I apologize in advance if you already answered this question, which I think you may have. But 20 years ago, I'm sorry, Matthew Sherman. 20 years ago, you said that there was an effort to disconnect sump pumps and other, footing drains and things like that. Do you recall at that point in time if the city subsidized any of that, or was that 100% at the cost of the homeowner?
The sump pump disconnect program, which was called, was each home was inspected to see if the sump pump was tied into sanitary and if the downspouts were tied in, and there was a graduated, depending how many things you had to fix, it was a graduated reimbursement. I think the maximum was $500 if you had a sump pump disconnect and had to disconnect your downspouts.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with any questions, or pass that mic to Mr. Doan?
Brian Doan. let's say we had a perfect world where the sump pumps were going where they were supposed to and everything else was draining where it was supposed to, not going in the sanitary. How would that affect the storm sewer? How much more taxed would that be if 70 million gallons went in the storm sewer?
You know, it's probably a question better directed to Dr. Burke, but I don't believe 70 million gallons across the entire city on an hourly basis. I don't know if it would be that impactive. I don't think it would be that impactive in the storm sewer system. It certainly would not be a positive, it would be a negative, but I don't know that it would be that appreciable.
Okay. Well, and you talked about the water flowing into the sanitary pipes. Do you ever worry about the water flowing out of the sanitary pipes?
Well, when sanitary pipes are surcharged, meaning there's too much water in them, you will get exfiltration into the ground around it if it can, which, you know, I think in a way reduces the amount getting to the plant. I don't know that it has that much of a negative impact on the soils, but there is exfiltration.
Thanks, Mr. Doan. Anybody else that would have any questions? I'll pass you to Mike. Anybody? Okay. Very good. I thank the staff and City Manager Borchert, Director Hughes for the first workshop, which was on sanitary. One of the equations one of the variables we have to deal with and understand so that we can get a grasp on the whole picture here. So, City Manager Borchert, do you have a question?
I just got to remind, the next workshop will be 2 weeks from last night. We'll be back on Monday nights, and then every other week for the following two. And again, 2 weeks from last night then will be the PowerPoint on Salt Creek, and we'll follow that with a meeting for all of the task force members to stay and work with the mayor as to assignments and responsibilities and reporting going forward. So those folks who aren't able to be here, we'll be contacting them, and probably to those that are here, re-informing you of that via email between now and then, and thank you for coming.
Very good. So basically the second and fourth Mondays will be the task force, or the workshop meetings. We've got 3 more to go. The engineering consultant hiring will take place in December. And then once the engineering firm is, a permanent hire is made there, we will start probably right after the holidays with regular meetings with the engineering firm, with staff, break up more than likely into subgroups to talk about the different issues, from ComEd to sanitary and stormwater to finance. How are we going to come up with funding to fix this? If it's 30 million or 50 million or 70 million, we heard what the old sewer system changed when we went from a combined system to a separated system. It was 10 million back then, which would be about 70 million today. So once we have some direction from the engineering, is if there is a solution, what's the cost going to be, and maybe at what level of protection are each one of those solutions going to afford to us as a community. We've got some vulnerable areas in our community that are unfortunately in low areas. We've got Washington Street is in a low area. We've got Pine Street in a low area. So we're going to be looking at each one of these sections in a creative fashion to see how we can help everyone. And we've got representation, I'm proud to say, from each one of those streets. I know Washington's got at least 3 or 4 members on the task force. Pine Street's got some members, et cetera. So I think we've got really good voices from each individual area. So, and my goal would be a report based on the engineer's time frame, if he's able, and we'll look for his guidance once that's in place. My guess would be a report, hopefully late winter, early spring. But that's to be determined yet. But that's kind of how I would see it, and so you guys can get an understanding of how expectation of time frame and where we'll be at. So okay. So we appreciate all of your help, your willingness to serve. You're going to be an integral part of this process to come up with solutions, and and make our town a better town, as we all have done. So we again appreciate your help. Any other questions or concerns by any of the aldermen? No? Okay. I ask for a motion to adjourn. Alderman Morley, Alderman Hipskin, with a second. All in favor to adjourn, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? We're adjourned.